So, as I was saying before, tell me your name and introduce yourself, and yeah, like I said, just lead us in with your first jump.
Okay. My name is Jack Gregory. I started jumping actually 39 years ago today in Fulton, Missouri in 1974. I'd seen jumpers, I'd seen the Golden Knights as a kid growing up. My dad was in the Air Force, and it looked like something I always wanted to do. So I finally found a place, made my first jump, and never looked back. I've got a little over 7,100 jumps now. Kind of since retired about 5, 6 years ago with back problems, but had a really incredible ride with it all. I ended up in Zephyr Hills around 1978, where things really started to happen. I got involved in CRW, which was fairly new back then, and we did a lot of team jumping with a 4-way team and an 8-way team. And on that 8-way team was a guy named Lou Sanborn, and we had a lot of fun together. We competed in the 1980 World Cup of CRW. It's the first World Cup of CRW ever held. And our 8-way team, we came in second, but on one of our jumps we set a new world record for the fastest 8-way, and Lou's position was 8th, by the way, so we always credit him for the world record. And our team won, my 4-way team won first place, which was a real fight. There was a British team, Army team, and they were very good, and we were fortunate to win. Learned a lot at Zephyr Hills. It was a big place, active relative work center, international as well. Later I started getting involved with AFF, teaching students. Ken Coleman was down in Florida at the time, and kind of learned from him. When the USPA went ahead and started the AFF program, I was at the first course they held in DeLand, where about 12 of us got our AFF instructor ratings. These were all the people that had worked under waivers with it. Shortly after that, Ken Coleman and Mike Johnston were going to travel around the United States and introduce AFF to all the other drop zones around the country. Unfortunately, Ken was killed in a ballooning accident, and kind of out of the blue, I got a phone call from Bill Otley asking if I would go with Mike Johnston to help run the first course. It was out in Paris, California, where I met another inductee, Jim Wallace, and after that course, they realized that one person couldn't do it, so I stuck with Mike for a year. It was a great year for me, traveling throughout the United States, meeting a lot of great people, going to all these big drop zones and little drop zones, and just a wonderful time. Shortly after that, I ended up getting invited to France to teach their AFF instructors. I went over for 2.5 weeks and stayed 5.5 months. They invited me to stay, and they sent me around all their different drop zones, load organizing, and that kind of became my life for 10 years. Winters in Zephyr Hills, working the season there, and then summers traveling around Europe, load organizing at boogies, teaching AFF instructors, and I was also a tandem examiner. So it was a great way to see Europe, going through the major cities, seeing all the great museums, architecture, the history, and then going out into the countryside where the small airports were and living with the people. One of the biggest thrills of my life was when I suddenly fell into a situation in 1987 in Koksijde, Belgium. They were going to have a world record attempt for the largest free fall formation. And I had signed up. I was just one of the jumpers. They had somebody from France was going to be organizing the jump. And when I signed in, I was suddenly told, this is the day before jumping started, I was told that the French organizer had bagged on them because he didn't believe that they had the people to make the record. And, oh, by the way, would I mind organizing this? So, I mean, with not even 24 hours notice, I agreed to take it on, and had to come up with the skydive, the exit flow with 2 C-130s, and long story short, we completed it on the last day, 126 way, and it was the first time that the large formation for relative work was in Europe. And it really, I think, had an impact on the European skydivers. They really realized that, hey, you know, they're pretty good jumpers. And Europe's been a hotbed for some really great skydiving ever since. Later, I ended up being hired by USPA. I was the Director of Safety and Training from 1992 to 1995. Really incredible, interesting time there. I learned a lot. Dealing with jumpers all around the country, all around the world. Hopefully I did some good, but I was very appreciative of being hired for the job. I then moved to Michigan, where my girlfriend at the time, now my wife of 16 years, Renee, lives, and began flying. I worked building time flying skydivers, which was kind of nice, and then I got into corporate jets and been doing that for many years. And although I'm not actively jumping, I'm still active. You know, I do some jump flying, keep in touch with everybody, and you know, even though I don't jump anymore, I'm still a skydiver and always will be.
Well, that is a really outstanding story, and you kind of answered all the other questions I was going to ask. I guess this would be the second and last question. What would you tell somebody, you know, say this video was in the physical museum, and somebody who hadn't quite learned everything about skydiving, but they were curious about doing it. What would you want to convey to them? Just somebody that hasn't quite tried it, but they're interested.
Well, my advice to anybody who is interested in jumping is do your homework. Check out the Parachute Center. You can see if they're a USPA affiliated center. That's usually a pretty good sign that their instructional staff adheres to the standards, the established standards of training and equipment. And then take charge of yourself. Be safe. I always told my students, you have to learn to walk before you can run. You see these experienced skydivers doing some really amazing things out there, but pace yourself. It'll come in time. Accidents happen when people overstep their abilities and try to push themselves a little too hard. I'm all for pushing the envelope, but do it carefully, safely, and in a positive, constructive manner. Just don't go off being a hot shot, thinking you're bulletproof, because nobody is.
Very good. I guess I didn't really exactly read your sheet, but any last stories or fun experiences that you haven't told yet?
I don't know if the statute of limitation has kicked in yet on a few things.
Go off record for that.
Yeah. No.
And if no, that's an appropriate answer.
No.
Amount of things.
No, there's just there's always been a lot of happy people in skydiving, so a lot of crazy partying at boogies over the years, and that's just part of the whole atmosphere of what skydivers are. It's a sport that's kind of interesting in that you spend maybe, on a busy day, if you make 5 jumps, so you get maybe 5 minutes of free fall time. You get maybe 10 minutes of canopy time. So 15 minutes in a day you've spent doing the sport. So a lot of your other time around the drop zone is with the people and socializing, interacting, learning about skydiving, but learning about the people. So that's part of it too. It's a very social sport because, There's a lot of people around. You have to deal with folks, and for the most part, skydivers are fun-loving people, and when it's time to party, it's time to party.
Yeah, definitely realized that last night.
Oh yeah.
Outstanding. I'd say this is definitely great.
Okay.